Now I can share the screen. Premdam, until what verse did you cover on Wednesday?
Discussing again.
Up to the fourth
verse
verse.
6 or fourth verse, yeah.
Up to the fourth verse.
Then discuss again.
Oh. Yeah, we can. So
Okay.
fourth is done.
Yeah.
Yes, Prabhu, fourth verse. Up to fourth verse.
So we are reading from Shrimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 2. This is the wonderful story of Ajamila. People in general are not very advanced in knowledge by which to discriminate between religion and irreligion. The innocent, unenlightened citizen is like an ignorant animal sleeping in peace with its head on the lap of its master, faithfully believing in the master's protection. If a leader is actually kind-hearted and deserves to be the object of a living entity's faith, how can he punish or kill a foolish person who has fully surrendered in good faith and friendship? So who is speaking these verses?
The Vishnu Dutas.
The
The Vishnu Dutas.
Can I get the phone so we
I
can...
don't have. You had it. Somebody wants to read the purport?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, shall I? May
Go ahead. Go ahead.
The Sanskrit word Visvasta Ghata refers to the one who breaks faith or causes the breach of trust. The mass of people should always feel security because of the government's protection. Therefore, how regrettable it is for the government itself to cause a breach of trust and put the citizens in difficulty for political reasons. We actually saw during the partition days in India that though Hindus and Muslims were living together peacefully, manipulation by politicians suddenly aroused feelings of hatred between them, and thus the Hindus and Muslims killed one another over politics. This is a sign of Kali Yuga. In this age, animals are kept nicely sheltered, completely confident that their masters will protect them, but unfortunately, as soon as the animals are fed, they are immediately sent for slaughter. Such cruelty is condemned by Vaishnavas like Vishnudutas. Indeed, the hellish conditions always described await the sinful man responsible for such suffering, one who betrays the confidence of living entity who takes shelter of him in good faith, whether the living entity be a human being or an animal, is extremely sinful. Because such betrayal now go unpunished by the government, all of human society is terribly contaminated. People of this age are therefore described as
Manda Sumanda Matayo, Manda Bhagya.
Manda Bhagavad Uparad. Sorry, I could not. Okay. As a consequence of such sinfulness, men are condemned. Mand, their intelligence is unclear. Sumanda Mataya, they are unfortunate. Mandabhaga, and therefore they are always disturbed by many problems. Upadrata. This is their situation in their life, and after death they are punished in hellish conditions.
Quite a strong purport here. Prabhupada is, I guess the verse starts with people in general are not very advanced in knowledge by which to discriminate between religion and religion. So it's important to see this, how the advancement of knowledge, once advancement of knowledge is tested by how they discriminate between what is religious and what is not religious. Religious is not like something rubber stamping that Hindu or Muslim or whatever. This religion or dharma, that is the real word, dharma, is what is the best for a person at the body, mind, and the soul level, ultimately at the soul level. And what is pleasing to Krishna. Dharma means the laws and instructions from God. That is dharma. It is not man-made. Sometimes people think that religion is man-made just to keep the society together and work in a harmonious way. Just like the laws of nature, nobody can create the laws of nature, right? We cannot create even a single law of nature. We just have to obey the laws of nature. So the laws of nature are actually laws of God. They are, in one sense, dharma of this material world. And then how to live in this world and how to attain spiritual perfection, and that is given um, as dharmic principles. So with the laws of nature, we don't have a choice. We have to follow them. And similarly, the dharma or religious principles that are given, we also don't have a choice. If we don't follow them, then we'll suffer the consequences. Just like if somebody tries to defy gravity and they jump from the top of the house, they will break their body parts. So similarly, if we defy the principles of dharma, then we'll pay very dearly as consequences. Prabhupada is saying that the person, they become manda, condemned, sumanda mataya, unfortunate, and always disturbed. This is the consequence of not following the laws of dharma as given by God. And even after they die, such a person dies, then there are further consequences, because everybody has to pay the price of the karma that they perform.
And this is actually one of the unfortunate realities of our life today, that because the desire for freedom is actually a right desire in the wrong place. So Prabhupada says that every living entity actually wants to experience complete freedom. And this lack of freedom that we experience in this world is something that is not a comfortable place for a living entity who's actually completely free by its very constitutional nature. So as a result of being in this condition, it tries to break free artificially from the stringent laws of nature. And that's what leads us to not wanting to follow these principles of dharma, because the principles of dharma in our conditioned stage represents bondage, represents control of some kind,
A restriction
or
in
restriction in our
enjoyment.
in our enjoyment. So it's, if one actually addresses the root cause of why we struggle with this, it's because we are looking for complete freedom. But complete freedom can only be had when one is actually free from these stringent laws. So there is a process to become free. But artificially, if we try to become free, then actually Prabhupada says, we become even more entangled in the complexities of this material nature.
Just like in the hospital, if somebody is suffering from some disease, jaundice or typhoid or whatever, there are restrictions on their food and their movement so that the person can become ultimately cured and become free. But if the person tries to artificially pretend that they are free and eat anything they want, they will become even more sick and maybe even die. So we cannot artificially become free from the laws of nature. But only by following dharma, we can become free from the stringent laws of nature.
And it's very interesting that like we follow 4 regulative principles, right? And those principles are actually called regulative principles of freedom. So even though they're exercising some kind of regulation on us, but they make us free. So it's something to actually think about, that how regulation can make us free, right?
So we'll take your thoughts, any reflections or
Stop share.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Daryl and Ashley.
Hi. Yes. So I have a question regarding someone ultimately being free from the laws once they follow Dharma. So what would that actually look like? So would that be something where because you followed it to the point where now it's like your nature, that's how you become free, because anything that you do that's basically just like your nature to do, it's no longer considered something like a law. It's just written on your soul. You just live by it. It's almost as if it never was a law to you. It just simply is. And is that how we ultimately become free from it?
Very good point. What could somebody maybe respond to what Ashley just said? Any thoughts from any one of you to what Ashley said?
very good question.
Can I chime in?
Yes, go ahead.
I mean, it's not that I understand it very well, but I mean, I think we can draw an analogy to the material world. Forget about being Krishna conscious. Like, if we don't follow the principles of the law of the land, then we are jailed. Means our freedom is taken away from us. But we still, I mean, we have the freedom to do whatever we want within those regulative, within those principles of the society that has laid down for us. If we don't follow that, then we basically lose the complete freedom of doing anything. I mean, that's basically the way I understand it.
Very nice, Tapas Prabhu. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anybody else would like to share your understanding?
I think also because we misuse our freedom so much that, I mean, yeah, we have freedom, like we have freedom to run into the middle of the road and get hit by a car. But if you follow the regulative principles of like the walkways and the traffic lights, then I think what we don't realize is that ultimately those principles that we'll be better and happier for following them. We just can't see them when we're more mature.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like that's actually, it's a very good point, Delia, because when we are small, then a child actually rebels and says, why do I have to do this? Or why do I need to eat my broccoli? And, you know, why can I not do this? And that's the mindset of someone who doesn't have sufficient maturity to understand, you know, what is the ultimate good for me. So the word that is used is shreyas and prayas, right? That, you know, we only, a child by the fact that he's immature can only see short-term gain, but doesn't understand what would be ultimately beneficial for me. So in the same way, in our modern society, we are so caught up with short-term enjoyment that we don't realize that there is a price. And the more we try to just look at that, the more we get entangled in its complexities. And finally, we get to a point where we feel completely helpless and we don't know what to do and why my life is the way it is. But it is because of this desire for unrestricted, unregulated sense enjoyment.
And actually, to your question, when a person follows Dharma, basically, which means we are following the instructions of God, then we, through our spiritual strength and by God's mercy, we are able to overcome the laws of nature. Like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Mameva ye prapadyante maya metam tarantite, that one who surrenders to me in faith and love, then they become free from the stringent laws of nature. The maya or material energy cannot affect them. That is what the soul is. The soul has nothing to do with this material world. We are artificially in this situation because of our desire to dominate material nature. And once we are free from that, then it doesn't affect us anymore. And the soul is, and the other side effect of that, or the main effect of that, is that we attain our original spiritual nature, which is love and service to God. So then we, as you were saying, we become one with the higher laws. Desire of Krishna, we become one with the desire of Krishna.
And you're right, it's like natural for us at that time. Yeah. So any other thoughts?
Can I say again some more?
Yeah.
So I think the thing to ponder, or the thing that we need to really ponder about is what we really want to do with this freedom. I mean, is the freedom that we have to enjoy in the material world, or do what is our dharma, or our innate quality or inborn quality, which is to render loving services to the Lord, right? So if we realize that our real job is to render loving services to the Lord, and in whatever freedom that we want to enjoy in that form is absolutely fine, in the sense that one could love Krishna as a father or a son or a partner or a whatever be the case, right? So as long as, or in any other ways, by singing, by cooking, by dancing, by so we have the freedom to do all that, which are our innate qualities. The moment we forget our innate qualities and try to do things that we are not supposed to do, then we basically rebel that, hey, I want to enjoy this way and I'm not able to enjoy that way.
Very nice.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
very nice point. At the same time, it's amazing, right, how Krishna honors and protects our freedom in both the spheres.
Mm.
And he lets us choose. And so, he doesn't force this, this is a choice which is very sacred to every living entity. And Krishna preserves the sanctity of that choice to the extent that he doesn't interfere. And he not just that he doesn't interfere, he actually facilitates that desire. So it's quite amazing.
The irony is that though the material freedom that we try to enjoy, we get miserable. But if you actually choose to serve the Lord with that freedom, then our so-called freedom in our material life also becomes more, much more enjoyable.
Yes.
That's so people, once they realize that, then you don't feel that misery of life.
Exactly. You can continue reading, right?
Yeah.
Ajamil has already atoned for all his sinful actions. Indeed, he has atoned not only for sins performed in one life, but for those performed in millions of lives. For in a helpless condition, he chanted the holy name of Narayan. Even though he did not chant purely, he chanted without offense, and therefore he is now pure and eligible for liberation. Purport. The Yamadutas had considered only the external situation of Ajamil. Since he was extremely sinful throughout his life, they thought that he should be taken to Yamaraj and did not know that he had become free from the reactions of all his sins. The Vishnudutas therefore instructed that because he had chanted the fourth syllable of the name Narayan at the time of his death, he was freed from all sinful reaction. In this regard, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes the following verses from the Smriti Shastra. Namno hi yavati shakti, papa nirharane hare, tavat kartum na saknoti, patakam pataki nara. Simply by chanting one holy name of Hari, a sinful man can counteract the reactions to more sins than he is able to commit. Brihad Vishnu Puran. If one chants the holy name of the Lord, even in a helpless condition, or without desiring to do so, all the reactions of his sinful life depart, just as when a lion roars, all the small animals flee in fear. So this is from Garuda Puran. And then this is from another Puran. It says, by once chanting the holy name of the Lord, which consists of the two syllables Hari, one guarantees his path to liberation. Skanda Puran. These are some of the reasons why the Vishnudutas objected to the Yamadutas taking Ajamil to the court of Yamaraj.
So I guess the Vishnudutas are arguing that because the Yamadutas, they had reasoned that Ajamil is full of sin. The whole his life he has committed so many sinful activities, and therefore he should be taken to a hellish planet. Vishnudutas are now counteracting that is not true. All their assumption was wrong, and they didn't really have a proper understanding of religion. And this is what is being brought out. So through this whole section, we'll get to understand, first of all, what is Dharma and what is Adharma, what is pious activity, what is sinful activity, and the power of chanting Krishna's names, how powerful that is. It may sound a little bit like out of this world, but that's what it is, because Krishna is out of this world and everything about him is out of this world. So just hold your argument or objection. How is this possible? Somebody like Ajamil who sinned all his life, he once chanted the name of Narayan and now he's free from all sinful reactions. How is that possible?
I'm going to read the next and then discuss.
Yeah. The Vishnudutas continued. Even previously, while eating and at other times, this Ajamil would call his son, saying, "My dear Narayan, please come here." Although calling the name of his son, he nevertheless uttered the four syllables Narayana. Simply by chanting the name of Narayan in this way, he sufficiently atoned for the sinful reactions of millions of lives.
I think we should not read this purport right now. Let's first discuss that, and because Prabhupada is making a different point here.
Okay.
So the point, of course, being that the holy name of Krishna, because if you
that will come now more. They will talk more about why.
Okay,
why it happens.
So then maybe we don't read this purport right now. Let's come back.
Yeah.
The chanting of the holy name of Lord Vishnu is the best process of atonement for a thief of gold or other valuables, for a drunkard, for one who betrays a friend or relative, or for one who kills a brahmana, for one who indulges in sex with the wife of his guru or another superior. It is also the best method of atonement for one who murders women, the king of his father, or one who slaughters cows, and for all other sinful men. Simply by chanting the holy name of Lord Vishnu, such sinful persons may attract the attention of the Supreme Lord, who therefore considers, because this man has chanted my holy name, my duty is to give him protection. By following the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies or undergoing atonement, sinful men do not become as purified as by chanting once the holy name of Lord Hari. Although ritualistic atonement may free one from sinful reactions, it does not awaken devotional service, unlike the chanting of the Lord's names, which reminds one of the Lord's fame, qualities, attributes, pastimes, and paraphernalia. So if you remember, this whole section of Shrimad Bhagavatam actually started by Maharaj Parikshit wanting to know what is the way out for people who are going to be suffering the reactions of their past karma in such a horrible way, right? The reactions of the karmic reactions are stringent, and they'll find you. So Maharaj Parikshit, being a very compassionate Vaishnava, he's very concerned. And so that was the beginning of this section, right? So now, finally, it is being described that, and if you remember in the beginning, we talked about atonement as one of the solutions. And that solution was rejected by Maharaj Parikshit. And he said, atonement is no good because it does not remove from within the heart the desire for sinful activities. So here now, the solution is being given that actually the best form of atonement is actually the chanting of the holy names. And how, even if one is chanting, without sufficient knowledge, or even once, then also one can be completely relieved from the reactions to their past karma. So, do you want to continue reading, or?
Let's see. So this is just kind of giving the comparative analysis of how chanting Krishna's names is more powerful than all other forms of atonement given in the scriptures. And the reason is given because this chanting awakens devotional service, and it immediately reminds one of the Lord's qualities and pastimes, and then this enables the living entity to establish that connection with Krishna, because the purpose of all religion is to reestablish our connection with God. That is the whole purpose of religion. Otherwise, if you break down the logic, why one should not lie, why one should not steal, all the moralistic principles that are given, they are ultimately for the purpose of freeing us from these lower modes of nature, passion and ignorance, and gradually establishing within us this attraction for God. And this chanting, and therefore the chanting of Krishna's names immediately starts that process and also attracts Krishna's attention towards that living entity. And therefore, this is the best process. So we'll continue reading. Nekantikam tadhikrite piniskrite mana punardhavati cheda satpathe tat karma nirharam abhipsatam hare gunanuvada khalu sattva bhavana. The ritualistic ceremonies of atonement recommended in the religious scriptures are insufficient to cleanse the heart absolutely, because after atonement, one's mind again runs towards material activities. Consequently, for one who wants liberation from the fruitive reactions of material activities, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra or glorification of the name, fame, and pastimes of the Lord is recommended as the most perfect process of atonement, because such chanting eradicates the dirt from one's heart completely. So we can read the purport.
Reading for quite some time.
Okay, so we can. You want to discuss?
Yeah, there's so much that we've already kind of gone through.
Okay.
This is like a whole other section, right, where it's like why, you know. So let's first. Oh, sorry. What happened? I think. Stop share. Yes. Okay. So what do you think? We'd like to hear from you. We've been reading this section. Where can you open the verses from here? So what are your thoughts? Does it sound too good to be true? Or does it resonate in any way? Why would the chanting just even once, in Ajamila's case, he wasn't even calling out to Krishna. And yet the syllables were powerful enough to completely eliminate all his sinful reactions. What's going on here? Are these just words to encourage us, or is there a...
I can give you a personal reflection on that. Growing up, I used to eat meat, and occasionally drink alcohol. But then after I started coming to Krishna consciousness in 2010, after started chanting, suddenly all the desires went away, and I stopped everything. So I think that it shows that's a very powerful thing. So it's not just a theory, but it actually works in practice.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Darren.
Yeah, so I'm really holding on to the part where it said by his duty he will respond, and I find this to be like very, very exciting because it literally like parallels. I grew up with a Christian background, and kind of left the Christian background and went into more of an impersonalist point of view before I met you all. And the personalist point of view was completely against everything about the Christianity. One of the main things they were against was the fact that they said that Christians, they believe that like they sin constantly, but then they believe just by Jesus I'm saved. And so it was something that was always something that was just, it kind of just drew a lot of people away from the teachings, because it makes you think like, well, that is true. How can somebody just be a constant sinner, but then just if they believe in Jesus, then they're saved? Like, but this really kind of parallels to me, because it's there was a part in the Bible where they said when Jesus was crucified, he turned to the left and there was a murderer that was on the side of him, and he asked him, can you save me? Can I be with you? And it was kind of a desperate moment because he was about to die, and he said, truly, when you awake, you'll be in paradise. And that just reminds me of, it's just so parallel, because it's just like again, back to what he said about in the text, with it being, if you call on my name, it's my duty. It's almost like it just reflects the heart of Krishna, how pure the love is. His devotion towards us exceeds anything we know about devotion. What we even think devotion is, his devotion to us is far exceeds even the word. So some of these things we might not even be able to understand how, but if we think like how Krishna's mind, or how Krishna would be, being the supreme person of even just the slightest bit of devotion we would have, or empathy that we would have, him being the supreme personality of that, it makes sense.
Very nice, Ashley. That was so beautifully put. Yeah, and it's true, because even though one example that Prabhupada gives is that a room may have been in darkness for the longest time, and one could say, well, this room has been so dark, and it's also the degree of darkness, right? But all it takes is just a little, little match, right? Little lit matchstick, and that can eradicate the darkness. So Krishna's name and Krishna, they are not different from each other, right? They are one and the same. That is the meaning of the word absolute, that there is no difference between the name and the named. And so when Krishna's name is vibrated, then Krishna is completely and totally present. And so when Krishna, Prabhupada would say, Maya is darkness and Krishna is sun. So wherever there is Krishna, there cannot be any darkness. So even though Ajamil's life and Ajamil's consciousness was immersed in the state of darkness, but as soon as this light of Krishna's holy name, as soon as it entered into the consciousness of Ajamil, even if it was done unintentionally, even if it was done without awareness, still it had the same power, just like fire is fire. If a child touches a fire not knowing what fire is, or an adult touches fire knowing what fire is, fire will act upon that person in exactly the same way. So same thing with Ajamil. He didn't know, but the name itself is all potent, and Lord Chaitanya says it's filled with all the potencies. So So just by coming in touch with that, there is a complete and here is the other thing that I was thinking, that it's not just like somebody could argue and say, well, it's not fair that somebody can be performing all kinds of sinful activities and then just take the name of Krishna and the whole, you know, the whole equation is balanced out. I mean, that seems like a cheap way to practice spiritual life, where one can almost get a license, right? A license to be immoral and arrogant and all of that. So what do you think about that? Is it a license?
You know, it's interesting because I think about a lot of the folks that take the impersonal view, kind of how we were talking about the session before last, and you know how they take information like this and kind of run with it and use it for their own you know, devices. But in the end, you know, they fall because they truly don't understand, you know, and again, like Ashley was saying, you know, got a lot of people that they don't believe, you know, they might read this, and it's just like how what Prabhupada was saying before about how when somebody reads and they have this preconceived notion about what they're reading or what they believe in, but not opening their mind to the possibilities, because Krishna can perform miracles. Krishna can do the impossible. You know, these are things that people would deem impossible for you to chant the name and then be completely cleared from all of these different things from millions of lifetimes in an instant. You know, but you know, this is possible. But you have the you know, these folks who are who look at the impersonal view and don't believe that Krishna is who Krishna is. And we see the same thing, like Ashley was saying, we see the same thing in Christianity as well.
Yeah. Nice, thank you. Anybody else would like to comment on this? That somebody, and this is actually a point that Prabhupada actually mentions in that purport too, that somebody could just take this and say, well, now that I know that all my sinful reactions can be completely mitigated simply by chanting the 4-syllable word Narayan, so you know, what's my problem? I can do anything.
It's like doing sinful activities and going and taking a dip in Ganges and coming out again and again doing sinful activities, because now I can start all over again. I have a clean slate.
So how is that different from
the
the
Ajamila situation?
Yeah.
I'm confused. I don't know, because it does seem like that's a Jamil situation, right? Because he was a Brahmana, and so supposedly he was living according to his Dharma and like righteous living and everything. I would assume that as a Brahmana, at some point he had encountered the names of Krishna. Is that accurate, or?
He was.
Yeah. So, and then last class, there was this question, or a few classes back, about like, oh, why did he, if he was a Brahmana, why did he fall into this temptation in the first place? And I think the answer was, he just wasn't ready yet. His heart wasn't pure enough. And that was just part of his process. At least that's what I understood.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe but when he dies and he's still, when he's on his deathbed and he chants Narayan, he gets pulled back. And even though he has been living the sinful life for this past however many years, the things that he did before, I don't know. Is it because he chanted Narayan, his son's name, or is it also because, like, at some point as a Brahmana, he also said Krishna's name, and so then that also, it's like a domino effect of him being brought back. Maybe that's why he, you know, like named his son Narayan in the first place, as a way of like coming back, like the story of Hansel and Gretel, where like they leave the breadcrumbs. Like maybe there are always breadcrumbs and there's always something, like maybe we do, our covering, our mirror covering is not still clear. I'm kind of thinking out loud here. I'm sorry, I'm talking.
No, that's okay.
because it takes a while, right, for this process of chanting to work, for us to achieve pure bhakti. And at the beginning, it's not pure bhakti, it's just a drop of bhakti. But then the text says that even a drop of bhakti is enough to gain you access to the higher planets or liberation or to be with Krishna. I don't know. So my thought is, in conclusion, maybe we do end up falling back into sin, but it's just a long process of gradually doing that less and less and less until there comes a point where we're completely free of it. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is a gradual process. And you're right that, even if we fall back, then yeah, gradually we can come back. So maybe because we have another discussion that we need to do, maybe we'll just address it. So you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so Ajamil's situation was that and this will be explained in the upcoming verses, that Ajamil called out to his son Narayan, like during the time of death, in a helpless condition, and without thinking that, I have sinned all my life, and now if I chant the name of Narayan, I'll become free. So he did not use the name to become free from his sinful reactions. He just helplessly called out to the name Narayan. So this is considered like offenseless chanting. He just helplessly called out. And even when he was addressing his son before, like, Narayan, come and sit, eat here, play with me, whatever, then also he was just calling out the name of his son Narayan in an offenseless manner. There was no calculation going on in his head. But when somebody consciously uses the name of God for like wiping out their sin and again continue to do that, then that's an offense to the name. And when that happens, then the person does not get that same benefit. And he has to now get purified of that offense. And the purification process is to repent. And we'll see that Ajamil in the end, he will repent. Very, very piteously, he will repent. So
also, I just wanted to make this point that liberation is actually not the ultimate, it's not a big deal. So even in Ajamil's case, yes, you do get freedom from your sinful reactions. That's just a very tiny byproduct of this chanting. Even in Ajamil's case, it's not that he gets a clean chit, right? He has to then come back again and finish off the process of bhakti. So all it does, it allows you to pick up again, because now the effect of that sinful reaction is mitigated. So now one becomes eligible, or one becomes capable of actually taking up the process.
So liberation in a practical sense, because sometimes the word liberation sounds like very esoteric, like as if you'll vanish from this planet and appear somewhere else, or go back to the spiritual world and things like that. But liberation, you will see in the case of, we learn from Ajamil that he completely loses interest in his material life. And he becomes fully committed to spiritual life. That is liberation. When we lose that interest in material activities, material enjoyment, and realize that, yeah, my life is only for pleasing Krishna, then you are already liberated. You're already liberated from the influence of this material nature. That's gone now. And whatever remaining time is left, and that is now is basically you are perfecting your love for God, and you're like fine-tuning it, because there are traces of contamination there, and they get removed, and you become fully pure to basically associate with Krishna directly. So liberation is like almost like a starting point
of bhakti. And I guess the other thing is that, liberation could also, so the sinful reactions going away could also be seen as the obstacles to the practice of bhakti being removed.
Yeah, the big obstacles.
The big obstacals, they're taken away. And so now, and we see this in the case of Ajamil, that just by this process of just, and we also talked about, if you remember, Agyata Sukriti, there was a discussion on that word, which means the unknowingly collecting spiritual credit. So by Ajamil continuously calling out the name of Narayan without knowing, he was building up his spiritual bank account. And so that spiritual bank account eliminated all his debt, wiped away his debts, and then he had sufficient positive cash in his bank account that he could get into the process of bhakti. So it's a platform from which one can jump into the process of bhakti, but it's not the end game. I think the problem happens and our struggle happens, and a lot of religions, including like you were mentioning Christianity, and also in the process of even like, you know, Hindus and, you know, the Vedic tradition, people just see that as like a you know, like a free ticket. So it's not a free ticket. All it is the removal of our obstacles. The karmic reactions are no longer binding us to our conditional life. We have the opportunity, the freedom, because those reactions being removed means that my consciousness is that much clearer now.
All the sinful tendencies, like we talked about, the bija and the kuta, right? The seed of sinful desire, the proclivity for sinful activities, the desire to control and dominate material nature, the desire to think that I am separate from God and I can become God. I mean, when one becomes free from all that, that is liberation. That is liberation. And then the next step now is like, it's like passing high school. Liberation is like passing high school. Now you have to go to college, and now you have to become like something that you want to become, which is a lover of God. And that's when the process of bhakti really, right now what we are practicing is getting to the stage where we can actually practice bhakti. We are just like
Kindergarten.
Yeah, kindergartners or apprentices. We are not practicing bhakti fully yet.
And Shweta, yeah, you're right. Yeah, Ajamila did come back to this world. He had he's given a second chance.
So he didn't die. He didn't die and didn't take birth again. It's just that he was really old, and at that point he was given the strength to now be like healthy again. And he went to Haridwar, we'll see, and then he spent the next 15-20 years of his life is completely repenting and reestablishing his connection. So that work has to be done. There's no like automatic.
Yeah, there's no shortcut, or it's not that just because I chanted the name of Hari once, now, okay, I can, you know, because there is still the desire within the heart is still not completely eradicated, right? So that is still there. So Ajamila had to do the work, just like each one of us. We are chanting the names of Krishna. So yes, the protection is there. The freedom from karmic reaction is there. And we see that, you know, just like Nanda Varma Prabhu was saying, but also so many other places we see that, you know, there's so like material life is so difficult. And it's impossible to even think of Krishna. And then suddenly life changes. And now suddenly there's a peaceful situation. Or maybe our karma was dragging us in a certain direction. Suddenly there's a change of that flow of karma. And you can see that now those things are not holding us down. But that itself is not enough, because now I have to still work on my consciousness and revive my original consciousness. And that work is...
It's like an athlete who had some fracture or some really massive injury, and they go to the hospital, and the hospital fixes their body and all the injuries are gone. But now the real work of rehabilitation will begin. Now the athlete has to now practice and get back his strength and get back his speed and all those things he was doing. So that is the next part.
So we'll pause here and see if that was there any resonance there, or any further questions, comments. Delia, does that help at all? You have to unmute yourself.
It's just I'm very confused by, but I don't think I'm gonna get it now. I think I need to sit with it and keep up my bhakti, and then maybe pray. You know that.
Do you want to talk about where the question or confusion lies? Which part of it?
Yeah, it has to do with the timing of the processes of bhakti, because, and then how we perceive things. Also working, because there's a lot said in the text, and I believe it too. Like I have no reason to doubt that of like Krishna's mercy and our spiritual credits, and all you need to do is cry out once, and you know, you can be with Krishna and everything. But it doesn't feel like that in our lives. It doesn't look like that in our lives. You know, like I wrote in the comments that, you know, we still get sick, and we still get into accidents, and we still get into conflicts with people. And so I don't understand, like on the one you were saying, Mataji, that like when you switch on the light, like the darkness is gone in an instant. But then at the same time, like there is a way in which it's also a process. So this I don't understand how it can be an instant and a process at the same time.
Okay, so we're going to read. There is a very beautiful verse in the Shrimad Bhagavatam,
Hare Krishna. Sorry, can I?
Bhaktilata, go ahead. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, I was how I relate was like, we all in our lives, we all go through that low point. So then that intentionally or unintentionally, or even unknowingly, we are praying in our heart, like to somebody, like some to come and save us. So when that low point comes, then Krishna's intervention is happening. So that is how Ajamila's low point was, like that leaving that world and then leaving the body, like. So unconsciously he called out for his son Narayana without any expectation. So I mean, I'm just speculating here, like so Krishna, Vishnudutas intervened, and then he was given the devotional process. So that's why we have to go through that process.
Very nice, Bhaktilata. Yeah, the low point, and then we call out, and then there is help. So Delia, just going back to your question, that it seems, and your question is so relevant, and it's an excellent question, that even though we are saying, or Krishna is saying, that our sinful reactions are mitigated, yet we see that our lives are not reflecting that. And it seems that we are still falling sick, and we are still going through our struggles and this and that. So this verse here in the Shrimad Bhagavatam from the 10th canto will perhaps, for me at least, it really addressed that. It should be recited. And
so this is on the 10th canto, 14th chapter, 8th verse. Tattenu susumikshmano bhunjana evatmakritam vipakam yadvagvapurvir vidadan namaste jiveta yomo
My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. Srila Sridhar Swami explains in his commentary that just as a legitimate son has to simply remain alive to gain an inheritance from his father, one who simply remains alive in Krishna consciousness, following the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, automatically becomes eligible to receive the mercy of the personality of Godhead. In other words, he will be promoted to the kingdom of God. The word Samakshimana indicates that a devotee earnestly awaits the mercy of the Supreme Lord, even while suffering the painful effects of previous sinful activities. Lord Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that a devotee who fully surrenders unto him is no longer liable to suffer the reactions of his previous karma, just like what we have read so far. However, because in his mind, a devotee may still maintain the remnants of his previous sinful mentality, the Lord removes the last vestiges of that enjoying spirit by giving his devotee punishments that may sometimes resemble sinful reactions. The purpose of the entire creation of God is to rectify the living entity's tendency to enjoy without the Lord, and therefore the particular punishment given for a sinful activity is specifically designed to curtail the mentality that produced the activity. Although a devotee has surrendered to the Lord's devotional service, unless he is completely perfect in Krishna consciousness, he may maintain a slight inclination to enjoy the false happiness of this world. The Lord therefore creates a particular situation to eradicate this remaining enjoying spirit. This unhappiness suffered by a sincere devotee is not technically a karmic reaction. It is rather the Lord's special mercy for inducing his devotee to completely let go of the material world and return home back to Godhead. A sincere devotee earnestly desires to go back to the Lord's abode. Therefore, he willingly accepts the Lord's merciful punishment and continues offering respects and obeisances to the Lord with his heart, words, and body. Such a bona fide servant of the Lord, considering all hardship a small price to pay for gaining the personal association of the Lord, certainly becomes a legitimate son of God, as indicated here by the words Daya Bhak. Just as one cannot approach the sun without becoming fire, one cannot approach the Supreme Pure Lord Krishna without undergoing a rigid purificatory process, which may appear like suffering, but which is in fact a curative treatment administered by the personal hand of the Lord.
that's where I guess, Delia, your question of it being a thing of the moment or like instantaneous thing versus a process.
Does
that
that
kind of
help?
addresses.
Does, thoughts, reflections on this verse?
That makes perfect sense. It's the consequences and the so-called negative action consequences that we experience are just pointing out where our attachments to other things that are not Krishna still are. Yeah, I get it. Thank you.
It's a verse that we go to again and again and again, even as a practicing devotee. So it's a verse that you will be going back to, because many times in the practice of our bhakti, we'll come to this point and say, Krishna, why is this happening? It's because, and also this sets the standard of what pure bhakti means. Pure bhakti means that even though the difficulties will come, but if one can live a life of gratitude, then one becomes eligible for the highest levels of Krishna consciousness.
So like chanting Krishna's names unknowingly or once or twice or whatever, or even after chanting so many times, it takes away the sinful reaction, because sinful reactions are there at many levels. The manifest and the unmanifest and the subtle sinful reactions and tendencies like buried deep into our mind and consciousness. So it takes away all the big ones, those are gone. But the problem is the subtler and the finer ones that are still there. And Krishna doesn't take them away right away, because he wants to work with us. He wants to work with us to purify us and also to increase our faith in him, to increase our dependence on him, to increase our love for him. So it's like a dance that happens, but it's not happening. Whatever purification we get or difficulties like getting sick or accident or all those things, they are just administered by Krishna to bring us closer to him. And they do not leave. And there's another place where it says regular karmic reaction when it comes.
There are two reactions to that.
A regular karmic reaction that comes and leaves a residue of further entanglement. The side effect of a karmic reaction is that it causes further entanglement for the soul in this material world. But when the treatment is administered by Krishna in the form of some sickness or whatever, it brings us even closer to Krishna, and there is no further karmic side effect that comes. So very different, very different.
Even though on the outside it may look like it's the same.
Yeah,